Now, Republicans in Congress have recently passed a bill that would allow ISPs to sell your browsing history to advertisers. We reported on this. The news is reporting on this. Everybody's reporting on this. Now, what it essentially does, if you're not familiar, is that it undoes rules passed by the Obama administration that were set to go into effect this year. Now, these rules would have basically stopped ISPs from selling your data to advertisers so that the advertisers can hit you with ads. Now, these rules would have still allowed ISPs to sell customer browser data, but only if they got permission from the customer. Like, hey, your ISP says, hey, Bob, I want to sell your data to an advertiser. Is that cool? Well, what am I going to get from it? Well, you're not going to get anything, but I'm going to get some money, and they're going to shower you with ads. Well, Bob's going to be like, fuck you. I don't really want to be showered with ads, and I don't want you making money off my private data. So the outcry, of course, was, hey, let's put these rules into place that prevent that. Because before, they were able to do that. So, of course, the rules would also have required ISPs to notify customers about how their browsing data was used. Now, Republicans, when they got into office, and Republican trade groups were like, get rid of them, dude. We hate these rules. We want to make a buck off you and your private data. We don't care if you want it or not. We don't care if you're annoyed by all the ads you're going to be showered with. We don't care. We want to make an extra dollar. Our donors are saying, we want more money, and this is the way to do it. So let's get rid of this rule. So they're considered, so this whole thing was considered anti-business. Your privacy is considered anti-business. Rules protecting them. Great. So one of the arguments used against this rule, and you'll love this, is that regulators fail to, and the quote, in the words of Senator Ted Cruz, quote, they failed to address the strenuous objections from throughout the internet community raised during the rulemaking process. So basically, they failed to listen to the objections from the internet community. So to what comments from the internet community does he refer to? I mean, I consider myself an internet savvy guy. Yeah, I try to know what's going on. I try to get to know the community, right? I don't recall seeing the community saying, hey, go ahead and take my personal browsing data without my permission. Well, then I guess that would be your permission if you said that. But take my browsing data so you can sell me ads. Wait a minute. No, it generally seems to be the opposite. It turns out people like their privacy and they hate ads. I know this. So what exactly are they talking about? What comments? Well, for that, I go to The Intercept in a great article written by Lee Fong. Now, the comments submitted to the FCC reveal that many of the opponents of the privacy regulation came not from any internet community, but from the groups with extensive financial ties to phone and cable companies, with some of their claims hinging on the absurd. Now, again, I'm going to read you some of these claims because this is ridiculous. Now, unfortunately, I do have to report that some of these industry-funded groups happen to also be civil rights groups. Civil rights groups. For example, the League of United Latin American Citizens and the OCA, Asian Pacific American Advocates, two self-described civil rights organizations, told the FCC that, quote, many consumers, especially households with limited incomes, poor families, appreciate receiving relevant advertising that is keyed to their interests and provides them with discounts on the products and services they use. So let me translate that into English. They think poor people want more ads in exchange for their privacy. That the poor people are okay with giving up their internet browsing privacy to these ISPs so that can sell them, so the ISPs can make a bunch of money to advertisers, so they end up getting showered with ads. That's what they think poor people want. Really? Really? That is both sad and ridiculous. Both the LULAC and the OCA receive funding from Comcast and other ISPs, so you would not be surprised that there is a money connection here. These civil rights groups are going out and saying, oh, man, poor people, they keep telling us that they want more ads. They want more ads, and they don't care about their privacy. Oh, look, I just got this money, this check from Comcast. What a coincidence. Turns out my donors also really want that. Who knew? Wow. Now look, I'm pretty sure, like, I grew up poor, okay? As somebody who grew up poor, I'm pretty sure the first thing that I did not want was for my ISP to see my browsing data. And look, let me remind you, when I first got the internet, I was a young teenager, okay? So you know what that browsing history would likely look like, okay? Did I really want my ISP to know what I'm browsing and then sell it to an advertiser so that advertiser can then sell me ads based on what I'm looking at? No. And it'd be even more hilarious, by the way, because the computer that I was using when I was younger was a shared computer. So you could only imagine the ads that would get served to anybody using that computer in the household. Like your mom uses a computer and it's like, what the hell have you been looking at? Why do I keep getting these ads? I don't know, Mom. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. But fun aside, there's some serious issues here. And here's a good quote from Brandy Collins, campaign director for Color of Change. Now, she had a great explanation of why this was actually bad for poor families. The data that big corporations collect from black and brown families ends up leading to predatory marketing that starts from a young age and lasts for a lifetime. Everything from payday loans to junk food advertising. Now, let me stop there. Payday loans are a huge, huge problem, especially in poor America, especially in poor and urban areas. You can end up getting trapped into a cycle of debt nonstop from some of these payday loan companies. Well, I've dealt with payday loan companies, and they've had some very, very steep interest rates. Okay, and sometimes, if you're unlucky, you can get trapped into that. And then there are issues in urban areas with food deserts, right? Where you don't have basically grocery stores that sell actual healthy food. You just have places like snack foods, gas stations that sell very, very unhealthy things. So obesity and health issues seem to be a problem in these areas as well. And on top of that, now you'll get ads in these areas for people that have internet, getting ads for things like, oh, come do this payday loan so you can get trapped, or, you know, come and buy all these unhealthy snacks. Great. So that's can obviously be a huge impact on poor families. Now she continues, even the most innocuous information can be used for online price gouging, data discrimination, and digital redlining. Attempting to reframe the concept of privacy for our children in vulnerable communities as a luxury and not a basic right is at best misleading and at worst a true disservice to any community these organizations purportedly represent. Now, right now, shots fired. Shots fired. She is going after these civil rights groups for pushing this type of legislation. Now, you also have Malkia Cyril, who is the executive director for the Center of Media Justice. Now, she reportedly scoffed at the idea that people living in poverty would prefer ads over the Fourth Amendment constitutional protections in a digital age. She called the argument preposterous and actually kind of insulting. Quote, "No, I am quite certain people want to live safe from government or corporate overreach, to know their speech and activities are protected, more than they want to be sold products at a discount. Regardless of desire, that is what democracy demands, and anyone claiming concern for civil rights who asserts otherwise should take a very thoughtful look at why." Well, we know why. But first, this regulation, of course, as I need to point out, would let your, like, the regulation that they're trying to eliminate right now already lets the companies sell your data if you say it's okay. So all they have to do is to get your permission. Hey, we want to take a look at your browsing history and what you browse for and what you shop for, and then send you ads based on that. Is that cool? Is that okay? And if you say yes, absolutely, well, then there's no problem because there's consent here. The problem is that that's not good enough for them. And they know it's a very unpopular idea that people actually value their privacy online and what they shop for. So they have to go around that, and that's why they're trying to get rid of this. So what this is about is it's not about helping these poor communities. No, it's about corporate greed. And these civil rights groups are making excuses because they get money from these telecom companies. In fact, according to The Intercept, the OCA has long relied on telecom industry cash. Verizon and Comcast are listed as Business Advisory Council members to the OCA and provide funding along with corporate guidance to the organization. And last year, both companies sponsored the OCA annual gala. So the OCA, unfortunately, happens to be in the pockets of the telecom companies. You also have AT&T, Comcast, Time Warner, and Charter Communications, as well as Verizon, serving as part of the LULAC Corporate Alliance, providing, quote, advice and assistance to the group. Comcast gave $240,000 to the LULAC between 2004 and 2012. So that is a lot of money. Now, neither the OCA or the LULAC immediately responded when asked if ISP industry money influenced their decision to engage on this privacy rule, which, again, seems to be outside of their purview. What does this have to do with civil rights? What does this have to do with helping black and brown people or Asian people or Latinos? It doesn't have anything to do with it. Seems like it's only there to help corporate profits. But, of course, they didn't respond because they don't want to admit, yeah, we're doing what our big donors want us to do. To advocate for policy outside of our stated mission goals, and that, look, this policy happens to be super incredibly beneficial for our big donors. Look, the whole issue here is follow the money. You follow the money, as always. As The Intercept had reported earlier this year, other civil rights groups, pushed on by the Multicultural Media, Telecom, and Internet Council, which is an organization that backs the telecom lobby, together with the OCA, also had mobilized to support the Trump administration's push to roll back net neutrality. MMTC, surprise, surprise, is also funded by Comcast and other major ISP firms. So this isn't a new thing. Even when, the beginning of Trump's administration, when he started pushing against net neutrality and putting in Ajit Pai as the FCC director, you had these civil rights groups, and I remember reporting on this, that were pushing this. They were pushing to get rid of net neutrality rules. Oh, but it's going to help people in minority areas. It's part of our mission statement is to help people in poor minority areas. No. What you're doing, aside from the great work that you actually do for these groups or for these groups of people, is you're helping corporations. You're helping these big telecom companies in return for getting all this money. And that's really the problem here. Now, the OCA, in addition to backing the telecom industry push against net neutrality, also lobbied regulators on behalf of Southwest Airlines after receiving financial support from the airline. But that's not part of the OCA's mission. How's helping Southwest got to do with anything with civil rights? It doesn't, but again, you have to follow the money. Now, other letters sent to the FCC in opposition to the privacy rule were also sent by ISP-funded advocacy groups. Groups like Grover Norquist's Americans for Tax Reform, who also wrote a letter to the FCC. Now, the Norquist letter attached a previous comment from allied right-leaning groups, including the Center for Individual Freedom, Americans for Prosperity, and American Commitment, claiming that the definition of private data is too highly subjective to be set by the FCC. Some might find value, quote, in an application using data about their geolocation in a particular way, this letter notes. Well, yeah, there's value here. The value is to the giant corporations. It's valuable to a company that wants to take your data and sell it. That's what this is. And so here you have all these very right-wing groups on the same side as these civil rights groups, all to defend giant corporations. That is the problem here. Americans for Tax Reform, the Center for Individual Freedom, Americans for Prosperity, American Commitment, of course, they all receive money from the giant ISPs. The National Cable and Telecommunications Association, This trade group has provided financial support to the organizations on the letter. The NCTA also filed a letter with the FCC forcefully calling for a repeal of the privacy rules. So why is this important? Why am I bringing this to you? Well, the article explains, for privacy and other civil rights advocates, the campaign to repeal the privacy rule could create new dangers for online activists. Watchdog groups note that ISPs can use consumer browsing data to compile detailed profiles of users' health, finances, political beliefs, and even their sexual orientation, which would also not be good for people who are minorities. And see, this is why the ISPs do not need to be doing this. They do not need to be collecting your data, and they certainly do not need to be selling it off to third parties or sharing it with the government. And if you think they haven't already started trying to collect your data, well, you're wrong. In 2014, Verizon began a program of tracking all mobile consumers' traffic using a system that was nearly impossible to opt out of. And other ISPs have experimented with programs that record every URL their customers happen to visit. So even way back then, even back in 2014, and probably earlier, these companies were looking for a way to monetize you, to look at your browsing history, to violate your privacy when you're online, to try and make a buck. That's what it's about. They cannot wait. And as you could see, they're throwing money everywhere. They're throwing it to civil rights groups. They're giving it all these right-wing lobbyist groups. All this money going to the politicians. Also, they can make an extra buck. And when you put that much money behind something, it means that they stand to make a huge return on investment off our privacy, off our personal data. And now, of course, Trump is expected to sign the repeal of these rules. So there it is. Watch out, man. Find a way to protect yourself online, to protect your personal privacy, because you can be damn sure that President Trump ain't going to do it, or the Republicans. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.